Chris, you may have to tell me when we are recording.
We're recording now.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Chris.
Oh, I see that little red button right here.
Oh, good. Hi, everyone. Welcome to RBCM at Home. My name is Kim Goff. I'm here today with a special guest from the Museum of Vancouver, Viviane Gosselin, and we're going to be having a chat about their newest exhibition, A Seat at the Table. In this format, you're going to see and hear us, but we don't see you. So please use the chat window or the Q&A for any questions that you may have. My name again is Kim Goff. I am a learning program developer at the Royal BC Museum, and I'm coming to you today from my home, which is located on the traditional territories of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, the Lekwungen-speaking people in Victoria, British Columbia. I appreciate the opportunity to live and to learn on this beautiful territory. RBCM at Home started in March when our museum and archive closed due to the pandemic. It was an opportunity to talk to staff about what they were working on from home. Now that the museum has reopened, we are continuing to use this as an opportunity to learn about museum projects and research, not only at our museums, but other museums around BC, and to reach out to those of you at home or at school around the province, and occasionally around the world. Today, we're going to the Museum of Vancouver. Located in Vanier Park in British Columbia, the Museum of Vancouver is the largest civic museum in Canada and the oldest museum in Vancouver, founded in 1894. On November 19th, the Museum of Vancouver is opening its newest feature exhibition, A Seat at the Table, an exhibit that explores historical and contemporary stories of Chinese Canadians in BC and their struggles for belonging. To tell us about the process of developing this exhibition and to give us a sneak peek before it opens is the Director of Collections and Exhibitions, Curator of Contemporary Culture, Viviane Gosselin. Hi, Viviane.
Hello. Hi.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, especially we can see how busy you are there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with the origins of this exhibit. When did the idea for an exhibition about the experiences of Chinese Canadians first begin?
Many years ago, there was an impetus and a real desire to talk about the Chinese diaspora in BC. It became more concrete when Henry Yu and I applied for a SSHRC grant and were successful. But Henry has been working on those questions of Chinese Canadian history in BC, the Pan-Pacific migrations for many years. So I think, at any point, an exhibition is at the confluence of so many desires and dreams for kind of rethinking the stories that shaped us in British Columbia. So we started a more kind of formal planning, if you want, 2 years ago in November. And we started this knowing very well that it'd be a highly collaborative project. So it's a co-curation with Henry Yu, professor at UBC, Denise Fung, who's a doctoral candidate at UBC, and myself, and a large cast of an amazing advisory group with representative of the Chinese Canadian communities, museum communities, and Kim, you are part of this committee. So you're with us 2 years ago. I was just looking at some of the slides that I presented to the committee 2 years ago, and your name was in it, and you've been a great player in this. And I'll make sure to point out some of the kind of ideas and elements of the exhibitions that are there based on some of the conversation that you and I had. Years in the making. It takes a village to build an exhibition, and that's where we are now, 2 weeks before opening. And you will see that there's a lot of things that are not on the walls. Objects are not yet in their cases, but I think it's still worth to give it a go and see what happens when I share what's there.
Yeah, that's very generous of you. One of our designers at the museum says, if you like a sausage, you should never see how it's made. And he refers to, if you enjoy museums exhibits, it's quite a messy process sometimes getting there.
Yes,
so we really
literally
appreciate you being able, being willing to show us how you got to where you are and this process and stage where you're at. And as you were saying, last week when you and I connected for a test, that it's a unique experience because the exhibit will never look like this again.
Exactly.
Folks can come after it's open and it will look the same no matter when they come. But right now, this is a unique time.
Correct. So I think for the better and the worse, that certainly I think I'm probably going to steal some of that video footage and compare it with the final product, because it looks polished, but there's nothing really there's exhibition developments are never a linear process.
Lots of iteration.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so you have some power. You mentioned you have some slides to share us to.
Just to support a little bit what you will see. I thought that we should start with, I call it the Under the Hood tour. Less than 3 weeks before the opening, oops. So that's always the big question. So how do I turn that? There you go. So I was just referencing the committee that are so important in the shaping of the project. So in terms of providing input, the vision, and it also identify people who can contribute content. I'll just say that also, even though I said exhibitions are not linear, time is for us. And so we started 2 years ago. There was a design gathering, design concept development, content gathering, an initial one anyway, a year and a half ago. We worked closely with a good team of designers. So Michael Lees from A Good Weather Studio and a graphic designer, Xiao Yanrong, who was so critical in creating layouts, graphic layouts that are attractive and also have to house 3 written languages. So all the texts are in, and subtitles of videos are in English, traditional, and simplified Chinese. We had a series of openings. So November 8, a year ago, there was a project planning office of the Chinese Canadian Museum, and the Pocket Gallery was kind of a teaser for the larger exhibition of A Seat at the Table.
Viviane, could you say a little bit about the Chinese Canadian Museum for folks who don't know?
Yeah, so when I was saying that any projects are at the confluence of many ideas and sub-projects, or in this case, larger projects. So A Seat at the Table is part of a much bigger project where the province 3 years ago made the announcement that there would be a Chinese Canadian Museum of British Columbia. And so we found ourselves in an interesting position where we could have an exhibition that would not just focus on Chinese Canadian in Vancouver, but the story of Chinese Canadian migration in British Columbia. And in fact, the advisory committee said you cannot do a good job talking about Chinese Canadian in Vancouver if you don't talk about their impact and their presence in the province. In fact, Vancouver was not a destination for the first migrations of Chinese who came here. So in other words, it just fit. So Chinese Canadian Museum opened its first office and its inaugural exhibition. I know that will sound a bit confusing for those who are not familiar, called A Seat at the Table. So the project is was designed to be a multi-sited project from the get-go. So A Seat at the Table in Chinatown is located at the Hudson Building on Pender Street. It opened mid-August. The 2 exhibitions are sister exhibitions. They are complementary. While here at the Museum of Vancouver, it's the exhibition aims at providing kind of a background and context and provide a framework to the Chinese migration in British Columbia. The exhibition at the Hansing Building focuses on people's memory. And the whole exhibition is staged in a way that is we want it to be a huge prompt, if you want, to encourage people to share their stories with the staff and students at UBC who are actively collecting stories. So a big thing about A Seat at a Table is it is part of, there's an oral history project that's kind of framing and constantly informing, if you want, the development of the exhibition and subsequent programs. And I will say that the exhibitions, also the two of them, will be traveling across the province after 2021.
Excellent. So very ambitious, multiple sites, and a traveling exhibit and an oral history component.
Correct. So the August opening worked well. People are now doing time visits using COVID protocol, and so we've learned from some of the like the public response, and which is super positive. That the staff there can't keep up. It's been booked from the get-go. People are booking their visit and are booking for weeks ahead. And in our case, we have luckily a bit more space, so we can have more people coming at the time. So they can be 30 people at any time in the gallery space. It's 4,000 square feet. So just quickly now, the floor plan, like any good book or film, it's structured, the storyline is structured around key ideas and themes. And so we have 4 zones. The introductory zone that we call Have You Eaten Yet?, which is a greeting, a common greeting in China and here to say hello, like the idea of food is embedded in it. So, and I felt to mention perhaps that the food and restaurant culture is really the portal that support conceptually and design-wise the content of the exhibition. So as we go through the intro zone, we go into a passage, you can see here 1.8, and entering a zone called Hungry for Change. And this is all about kind of focusing on the experience of settling, creating strategies to belong, and really hinting at the great diversity of Chinese or immigrant experiences across the province. As people move through in zone 3, so wait to be seated section is really a response to some of the comments that our advisory committee members were saying, is the idea of racial discrimination cannot just be a footnote in the exhibition. And so the design team, curatorial team, we responded to them by dedicated this space. I mean, it's embedded throughout. The idea of resilience in the face of great adversity and discrimination is embedded in the stories. And yet there's a section that you'll see that focuses on the systemic nature of it. And the last final zone, the Chinese smorgasbord, is really talking about stories of creating space to belong in many ways in a different register. So I thought I could carry my laptop and take you through, but just before that, I'll just say, I just nod to regional museums across the province that have lent us artifacts, the Lytton museums and museums in Caribou and Nanaimo. The idea is, again, to as a provincial initiative, is to talk about experiences of immigrant population that came and settled in throughout the province, but also to work with regional institutions that have treasures. You'll see, I'm just showing you like a hint at the restaurant booth that you'll see in the making. This is an image of the pocket gallery backlit. The backlit seems to be our signature these days. It's just a fun way to be able to play with lights, have darker areas, but making sure that text and images are highly readable. part of that big family that produced the exhibition is a vast contingent of students from UBC, but also from the Center of Digital Media, so CDM. And they were really critical in producing these digital elements that appear in the exhibition. Again, today, you'll see a lot of gray walls. This is where the projection should be, but I just wanted to make sure that we'd be referencing their work, as well as 3D models and augmented reality elements that are throughout the exhibition. I'm just gonna go quickly. Again, great little initiative, interactive elements created by CDM. We sent a young filmmaker, Christina Li, in China, in Kaiping, to take 3D scanning of villages and of where many of the, in the Guangdong regions, early migrations, really, people came mostly from the Guangdong regions. And the idea and an ongoing theme is to talk about the ties, ongoing and enduring ties between Chinese immigrants, their descendants, and those family villages. And that's what some of the monies that or remittance were sent back to these villages. In this case here, what you see is defensive village houses in Kaiping that were built from using the money from overseas Chinese. And so, you know, rather than just showing you images, I think I'll take you into the space. So are you back at seeing me here?
Perfect, yeah.
All right.
So highlight your video so we can see what you've got to show us. Looking forward to having a look.
So now the idea is to turn this around. So I'm not sure that you see, is that good enough? So kind of a little.
There we go. That's
all right.
Yeah,
that's where I was sitting, right in that little section where it's a very kind of moment in time. People in the restaurant have left. They left the uniform. And reminiscent perhaps of Chinese Canadian diners in the 40s. We asked Paul Wong to create this environment, a bit of a nod at dioramas that you'd have in a museum, but with a twist. So you're looking at the napkin holder here. There are images, and again, they're nothing frozen in time. It crosses the many migrations that make the Chinese Canadian migrations and British Columbia. Yeah, so we are entering here. I'm not sure that you see those 6 cases.
Yes.
Can you see that? So those are, and the idea is to not, there's very little text. There's going to be keywords on those boxes rather than lengthy text. Those are kind of teasers or kind of announcing the theme. So in front of the Lucky Cat, we'll have aspirations, and then here the fortune cookie will be.
Oh, that's beautiful. So they're like shadow boxes.
They're shadow boxes.
Object inside of each.
And so they pop because lighting is in the case, and there's going to be these keywords of diversity, innovation, traditions. China, the soya sauce, for example, is kind of the quintessential, food that is now associated with comfort food for many, like across culture, right?
The China Lily bottle, Viviane, is China Lily a BC product or a Canadian product?
Well, it's actually, this is a great question, Kim. I don't know. The reason why we chose,
what I grew up with.
Oh, is that correct? Well, in talking with partners and people who work with also indigenous communities, they were saying that for many indigenous communities in BC, soya sauce is associated with China lily. So there was that kind of that other layers, if you want. But certainly, and we can talk about this, like one of the themes really is looking at the experience of Chinese immigrant and their interactions with other migrant communities and indigenous communities. So certainly this ginger pot here references that, and the keyword in front would be solidarity. And there's Coast Salish weaving wrapped around the ginger pot. And here the word would be racism. So one of the themes, the recurring theme, is looking at the impact, the far-reaching impact that racism and legislation at the federal, provincial, and civic levels had on the experience of Chinese immigrants and their descendants. And so it's written in very small, but you have an ad here on the transit schedule, and it's talking about the Bismarck Cafe, and it says white cooks only, and it was direct reference in not as in not having Asian staff in the kitchen. So as people come in, so just objects, keywords, people will be invited to go through that hallway. All those gray zones here at the moment and will be projections. I will walk fast.
We could use our imagination there.
That's right. That's what I said. Under the hood. So just think. And you see here the fish aquarium, the fish tank. We just put the fish. This is why people go to grad school, is to learn how to install a fish tank with little fishes in it. And so, yeah.
Viviane, sorry, there's a question here from Tina.
Yeah.
She's saying they're working on anti-racism initiatives with their elementary school in Victoria. Will there be any complementary educational online programs for young children as part of this exhibit?
So there will be educational components for the exhibitions, both a seat at a table in Chinatown and at the Museum of Vancouver. Now, and you know, everything is incremental. So as we're speaking, we lost many of our players in the education team, but certainly our education lead have now the exhibition content, but they just, like actually visitors, they will get familiarized with the content and strategize kind of and think through the pedagogy. There's in designing it for different school levels. So in terms of online, there's going to be virtual tours, so that we have developed a bit of a expertise here in developing virtual tours animated with educators, but also with but also self-guided, where people will have the text and the videos pop up.
Oh, excellent. We can look forward to that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the question. And there will be public programs, but school program is definitely one of the deliverables that we want to have for later this fall. So I can't see what you're seeing. So are you seeing something like
a box?
Yeah, a box. So, and the reason why, I mean, like the text right now, like we're just playing with the prototype for the exhibition panels, but I wanted to have this just to speak to your intervention, if you want, in that project, and that you had told me about Grace Wong Snedden, who is a Victoria resident and had a great story of her dad, Janine Young, who came to Canada in 1908. You know, again, to break this idea that people came and, you know, settled in large town necessarily. It wasn't the case. People went all through British Columbia, wherever there was work. And so Janine Young came to Bamfield, was one of the few, if not the only Chinese in that area. I mean, I don't know about who's been to Bamfield, but it's not the most accessible place even today. I can only imagine in the early 1900s. And he interacted, made friends with the indigenous communities, and, you know, spending a lot of time as a cook for the telecommunication cable company, but also in his spare time discovered a passion for baking. And so what you see here is the cake decorating set that Grace, his daughter, lend to us. And there's also an image, I don't know if you can see it in the panel, but here's Janine Young with his friends and a big cake. He was known, famous for his big, wedding cakes, birthday cakes. So here you have an idea of friendship, cross-cultural, not in large centers. And someone also whose stories, he lived separated from his family, married in China, but went back to British Columbia to work and lived separate from his family for decades. The only person who was born in British Columbia was Grace, and he essentially saw her, is the only child that he saw growing up, and was able to make a cake for her wedding. So there's just so many layers to that story, and so thank you, Kim. Thank you for introducing us.
Yeah, I met her, I think, in 2007. She did a memory box for us and told that story, and I've never forgot it. I thought it was so touching. So I'm thrilled to see it there.
Yes. So I mean, I went very fast here. So you see the restaurant booth. There will be short. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are those TV screens, or will those
Yes, they
TV
are.
Screens?
Yeah, so there are TV screens. As I mentioned earlier, there's an extensive oral history project, and there will be snippets, so short, excerpts of these interviews that speak to different themes of, resilience and kind of strategies for people who want to belong to many communities. The fact that Chinese Canadian, like the great diversity also of the diaspora, not everyone came from China. So we have people talking about their Cuban Chinese roots through the portal of food again. So people will be able to sit. There's been some COVID accommodation where there's going to be a sound dome. Sounds won't be through headphones. It will be through mugs on the table, and the sound will be, so the source of sound will, has been adapted. We have here just like a lonely stool here, but there's going to be more, and there's this large projection where people will be able to see Jade Dynasty in the interior and the kitchen. So constantly interfacing the images of behind the kitchen and in the restaurant where customers are. So just very contemplative. There's soundscape that will be living in the space. So, the chatters from the people in the restaurant, cooking sounds. I'm taking you now to a different space. Can you see? This is
it looks very digital.
Yeah. So we really alternate between the analog and the digital immersion. So the restaurant booth is really kind of quintessential Chinese Canadian diner. I like to use the word immersive because people think immersive as digital, but exhibitions in many ways are immersive environments. That's why people go there rather than, if they decide to read a book, that's one thing. But how we stage knowledge in the gallery space should be different from being just a book. Now here, we're talking digital immersion. So there's four walls, and it is a piece by Judy Young. So I think it's very important to kind of have these artists, just like Paul Wong. Judy is looking, and of course her piece is not here right now, but looking at a reflection on the many Chinatowns, so in Canada. So she's her piece is, I would say, contemplative, abstract, beautiful. You see elements, iconic pieces from different Chinatowns that are moving in the space. There's something a bit nostalgic and at the same time not. So I think that I think people will enjoy that as kind of a break from looking at objects and reading texts and videos. Suddenly there's something that's just asks you to be in this space and soak into that space. Correct. Another form of here, immersive, analog and immersive are those giant, what we call lanterns, but they're, if you want, pillars, and pillars are foundational. And what you start to see as foundation here is racist texts. So legislation at the federal, the civic, and the provincial level that are working at excluding Chinese from being able to operate, to work where they can, where they want, or to be able to entertain where they want. So really kind of creating these barriers, formal barriers for limiting the mobility, social, economic mobility of Chinese immigrants and their descendants. What was very important, I mean, those texts are largely historical, but we did solicit content from people asking them of today. And I was, again, a committee member who said, you know, it can't just be past tense. And of course we agreed, this is all about past, present, and future. And so it made a lot of sense. So for each panel, we have contemporary content. So for example, here from Jane Chi, some have assumed I don't speak English. Others have assumed that because I am fluent, I would find hearing judgmental and derisive remarks toward fellow mainland Chinese immigrants, especially newcomers and international students on the West Coast, acceptable. So those are like powerful, you know, words that is speaking to the kind of enduring racist attitudes. And sometimes people think it's benign, but it isn't. So really, and you know, what has happened is life has happened between, you know, 2 years ago when we started the project, yes, COVID, but also the Black Lives Matter. Throughout the COVID aspect, you know, Vancouver Chinatown was defaced, some of the monuments. And so, you know, very kind of concrete, tangible gesture that says that racism is well and alive. And at the same time, there is hope and people, and the question we ask is what is our responsibility in making, you know, communities socially just. So I work here, I remember meeting with someone who focuses on trauma and looking at traumatizing events and moments and how people can be triggered in gallery space. Because I mean, this is not everything. There is more on the side of the wall. So there's a lot of, you know, it could be very oppressive. It could trigger people. And so we need an area here where people, as an, you know, there's going to be an outlet and you have, again, use your imagination, questions for people to, you know, inviting them to share their experience of everyday racism, but also their ideas on how to build more resilient, kinder communities. So here it's going to be what I call order grabber, but it's the wrong term. They're called chit rails. If you have work like I did and in restaurants, a waitress many decades ago, you know, you take the order on a pad and you take the sheet with the order onto a little magnetic board, and the chefs, the cooks can take it. So it's going to be filled with this. It actually becomes in that space. So this is where people will be writing. There's also going to be a social media element to that. But the idea is that people will share their thoughts. If people feel, you know, it's the zone 3 is very upsetting, you know, there is an outlet. There's going to be, of course, programming online and in-person, small in-person gathering to kind of unpack that, but also to push those ideas and turn them into action. So, so that's here.
It's such an important aspect to have, is for that feedback, and I love that you kept it so thematic. As I see, it looks like takeout food boxes hanging from the ceiling here.
Oh yeah, that's right, correct. A little bit of an eye candy right there for you. Yes, the idea is to always kind of strike a balance between playfulness and serious content, and it is deliberate in that it's more digestible. the content, I think, those big ideas, and it's the restaurant kind of concept and design, I think, helps ground the content. Now,
we just have about 5 minutes left, Viviane.
Yep.
But it looks like we're coming to the
yeah, we're coming. So here, kind of the theme here again is the fish, and the fish tank. I don't, there are a lot of fish tanks with large or small fish tanks, and I've been to many of the Chinese Canadian restaurants in the past 2 years, and fish tank seems to be like that kind of that furniture or recurrent element that we wanted to put. So what you see here is an installation by visual artist Paul Wong, and it is called My Mother's Cupboard. He has a very touching video that is going to be projected on the wall in that zone where Paul's mother talks about the food in her cupboard and explains what it's for and how she cooks it. And the idea was that, Chinese Canadian diners are all about home cooking. And so we really wanted to have that element here, that idea of comfort food and what it means and how it connects to your home, but also when it becomes an opportunity to share who you are and as well as exchange knowledge. So what you see here is the tablecloth. You have letters that were written, again, that tie between relatives in China and the people living here. So correspondence over decades between the mother of Paul Wong and family members. And we pushed the idea on. So we wrapped the chairs, but also we did that with the other themes. And of course, this is like very bare at the moment, but there are going to be some installation in the center to talk about, in this case here, the importance of language. Learning the language, continuing sharing your knowledge of the language, but also how do you share, what's happening to your community, well, through media, social media. So that will be addressed here. This is all about performance. So we see here posters of Hot and Noisy Chinatown Mahjong Social, an event that takes place in Vancouver's Chinatown. So there'll be more about performance and dragon boat racing. And so that's in a nutshell what you'll have in the space. This is quite the exercise, I realize, with an exhibition that's not open yet, but I think it is a sneak peek, and hopefully people are getting something out of that.
Oh, absolutely. I've got a decorating idea now. I love the letters being incorporated into fabric. I think what a beautiful, it's just a beautiful way of incorporating family history into your living area.
True. Yeah,
it's beautiful. And just the work that we see coming up looks amazing. Comment here from Alyssa, looks fabulous. Can't wait to come and see it. So, and it's evident as well, all of the hard work and just the incorporation of so many different types of skills and people, from your exhibit artists and technicians to artists like Paul. Is it Paul Wong that you said?
Yes, Paul Wong, Janine Young, Kitoi Joseph, who's Squamish of Chinese ancestry, has produced a piece for the exhibition. We've commissioned him to do this, and where he blends tradition of Coast Salish art form and Chinese mythology. And yeah, so I mean, working with artists is kind of a recurring theme as well. I think we find that the individual visual artists or artists of, sound artists bring so much to a project.
Well, thank you so much for taking time today to share this with us. I'm continually impressed by the Museum of Vancouver, as I know many of my colleagues are, and with you in particular, and the collaborative approach you take to all of your exhibition design and work. It is inspiring, and the results are very beautiful. So thank you for sharing that with us. I'm so glad folks could take time to join us today. If you missed something, we have recorded this presentation. You will find our recordings on the YouTube, pardon me, you will find our recordings on our YouTube channel. And you can go to them there. It looks like my PowerPoint kind of went funny, so I'm just going to take it off. And we have reopened. We are operating, and we have reopened, but we are operating on reduced visitation numbers. You are very welcome to come and visit us. Please just visit our website for more information about time, tickets, and when to come. Our newest feature exhibition, Emily Carr, Fresh Seeing, is now on until January 24th. We will be continuing our at-home kids, and at outside for the foreseeable future. And links for all of these programs are posted on our website. Next week, I will be chatting with the co-curator of the Emily Carr Fresh Seeing exhibition, Kiriko Watanabe of the O'Day Museum. So please join us. And until then, take care of yourselves and one another.